Priscilla Presley always believed she knew every word Elvis ever wrote to her, until a forgotten envelope surfaced in a Graceland storage room. Inside was a letter he never sent, dated weeks before their divorce, filled with a truth so heavy it could change how the world remembers him. And she wasn't ready. Graceland, August 12, 1985, just after 9:40 p.m. The grounds were almost silent except for the low rumble of thunder rolling in from the east. The night crew pushed carts down the marble halls, their steps echoing in soft taps. Dust floated in the air as lights buzzed faintly above the trophy room. It was the kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder, every memory feel closer. Priscilla stepped inside, holding a small flashlight even though the room was lit. She had returned to help sort items for a new exhibit. Old scarves, ticket stubs, a cracked pair of sunglasses Elvis wore during soundcheck at the Hilton. It was simple work, until something unusual caught her eye. A 1962 framed photo leaned slightly off-center on the shelf. That alone was strange. The staff kept everything perfectly aligned. She reached out to straighten it. As she lifted the frame, something slipped behind it with a soft whisper. A small cream envelope. Her breath paused. For a moment, she thought it might be a fan letter that accidentally slipped through the cracks. But when she turned it over, her heart tightened. There was no postmark, no address, just his handwriting, bold, looping, familiar in a way that made her chest ache. Elvis. The blue ink script was unmistakable. She held it gently, almost afraid it might crumble. Why would he hide something like this? And why had no one ever mentioned it? She glanced toward the doorway, listening to the soft hum of the air vents. No one else seemed to notice her stillness. She felt the weight of years pressing against her. What if this was something he had wanted her to find? Or worse, something he never meant anyone to read? Her fingers traced the sealed edge. The room felt colder, as if the walls themselves had pulled back to listen. Thunder boomed outside, shaking the window pane. A question rose inside her, sharp and sudden. Do we ever truly know someone we love? She opened the envelope slowly. The flap lifted with a dry crack, the paper aging at the corners. She unfolded the letter. The first thing she saw was the date, and her whole body went still. The date on the letter shouldn't have existed. Priscilla stared at the date as the paper trembled slightly between her fingers. January 6, 1973. 1 week before their final court hearing in Santa Monica. The timing hit her like a sudden drop in the chest. That week had been a blur back then. Tight schedules, hidden arguments, reporters outside every gate. She never imagined he had written anything during those days, let alone something this personal. A gust of wind rattled the glass behind her. She read the date again, slower this time, as if it might shift into something logical. But it didn't. It stayed impossible. She whispered the year under her breath, feeling the air grow heavy around her. Why had Elvis chosen that exact day to write? And why didn't he send it? She lowered her eyes to the first line. The handwriting looked different from his usual confident style. Softer, almost hesitant. The sentence curved downward, the letters tighter than normal. He wrote like someone holding more weight than ink could carry. She felt it instantly. It wasn't Elvis the performer on the page. It was Elvis the man, stripped of spotlight and swagger. A crack of thunder echoed through the trophy room. The lights flickered. Priscilla inhaled slowly and read the next few lines. Elvis wrote about long nights, about noise in the house, about how even familiar rooms felt farther away. His tone sounded tired, as though he'd been fighting something no one could see, something she had missed. She felt her heart tightening. Had he been trying to reach her during those final days? Had she been too overwhelmed, too guarded, to notice? The thought stung. Regret has a sound small, sharp, like breath catching. She felt that sound now. Outside, the wind grew louder, pushing branches against the window like restless fingers. She kept reading. Elvis apologized for moments she barely remembered. He admitted he didn't know how to talk without turning every feeling into a joke. He wrote that he didn't want to lose the quiet moments, the simple ones that fame always stole from them. Every sentence cut deeper. Then the storm snapped. A flash of lightning flooded the room in white, and the letter trembled in her hands. She moved closer to the table, setting the page down before her hands betrayed her. Her eyes scanned the middle section, searching for something to steady her. Instead, she found the line that knocked the air out of her. It was short, only a few words, but they landed like a stone. She stopped reading. The world seemed to tilt for a second. How had he kept this buried? Why hadn't he told her when it still mattered? She touched the ink, gently, as if the words might burn her. A question formed in her mind, one she had avoided for years. What if the truth we need most arrives too late? Her throat tightened as she read the sentence again. Slower this time, barely breathing. Halfway down the page, one sentence shatters her. Priscilla stood frozen, the storm pressing against the windows like a living thing. That single sentence kept echoing in her mind. I'm afraid you'll forget the man behind the stage lights. She read it again, tracing the curve of every letter, as if understanding the shape might soften the meaning. Didn't. The words carried the weight of a man scared of becoming invisible in his own life. A deep ache rose in her chest. She remembered the summer of 1972, Las Vegas Hilton, long hallways full of cigarette haze, fans waiting, cameras flashing. One night before a show, Elvis sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees. He told her quietly, "They cheer for Elvis, not me." At the time, she brushed it off as nerves. Now those words landed differently, like a quiet alarm she had ignored. The trophy room felt smaller. The gold records on the walls glimmered under the flickering lights, each one a reminder of the version of Elvis the world adored. But the man who wrote this letter wasn't that Elvis. He was the one who paced the hall at 3 a.m. He was the one who reached for silence more than applause. He was the one who needed someone to see him without the shine. Priscilla swallowed hard. Was she part of the reason he feared being forgotten? Did she misunderstand the pain he hid behind his jokes? The guilt pressed in slowly, like a rising tide she couldn't stop. She leaned over the table, hands braced, steadying herself. The storm cracked again. A bright flash lit the room, revealing dust floating like tiny ghosts in the air. She pulled the letter closer, scanning every inch for context. It felt like reading a confession from someone already gone. A part of her wanted to stop, afraid of what the next lines held. But another part knew she had to continue. Sometimes the truth hurts more when avoided. The crowd outside her memory roared softly, the kind of echo that stays after years of concerts and chaos. She wondered, how many people loved the legend but missed the person? And how many times had she done the same? She exhaled shakily and turned her attention to the next paragraph. Something unusual stood out in the margin. A small scribble slanted and rushed, almost like he added it at the last possible second. The ink looked slightly darker, fresher, as if his hand hesitated before writing it. Her heart rate spiked. She moved the letter under the lamp, trying to read the faint curve of the letters. It took her a moment to recognize the name. When she did, her eyebrows knitted together. Red West. The sudden mention hit her like cold water. Red had been more than a guard. He had been part of Elvis's childhood, part of his inner circle long before fame swallowed their world. But by early 1973, things between them had fractured. Rumors, fights, tension that spilled into headlines. Elvis let him go, and they barely spoke after. Why would Elvis tie something this personal to Red? Why write his name here of all places? And what did Red know? A sharp breath escaped her. She remembered whispers from that era. Red telling someone that Elvis was headed for a breaking point. She had dismissed it back then, thinking it was just old friends drifting apart. Now those words resurfaced with new weight. Lightning flashed again, filling the room with a harsh white glow. A chilling thought crossed her mind. Had Elvis been trying to warn her? Or was he asking for help he didn't know how to request? The question pushed a tremor through her hands. She leaned closer, eyes locked on the margin note. Every feeling inside her tightened. That single scribbled name changed the tone of the entire letter. It shifted from heartbreak to something deeper, something she wasn't prepared for. Then she saw the next line forming at the bottom of the page. One final paragraph waiting beneath the margin scribble. And she felt the air shift. Then she sees a name in the margin. A name she never expected. Priscilla slowly sat down, the letter held gently between her fingers as the storm pressed harder against the windows. She couldn't look away from the scribbled name in the margin. Talk to Red, he knows. The words felt rushed, almost panicked, like Elvis wrote them in a moment of fear or clarity, or both. She brushed her thumb over the ink, feeling the slight groove the pen left behind. Thunder cracked again, louder this time. The lights trembled. She remembered the last phone call Elvis ever had with Red West. Voices raised. A door slammed. Red leaving Graceland with his shoulders squared and his eyes full of something she couldn't name back then. Frustration, sadness, maybe anger. But now that memory felt different, like it belonged to a puzzle she never finished. Why would Elvis link this personal letter to someone he had pushed away? Priscilla leaned closer, studying the hurried handwriting. It didn't match the slower, softer lines from the upper part of the page. It looked like something he added after thinking too long, or after realizing something he didn't want to face alone. A sudden realization pushed into her mind. Had Red seen something? Something Elvis couldn't bring himself to write directly? A chill traced down her back. The trophy room seemed colder, the air tighter. She read the margin note again, feeling tension settle in her stomach. Red had always been one of the few people Elvis trusted before fame twisted everything around them. If Elvis wrote that Red knew, it meant he wasn't talking about the divorce. He was talking about something deeper. Lightning flashed. A short, sharp burst of white. Silence followed. Priscilla unfolded the rest of the letter with careful hands. The next paragraph waited at the bottom, written in a steadier tone, almost as if Elvis wanted to leave something softer after the fear he had spilled above. She took a breath and read the first sentence. Her heart squeezed. It wasn't anger or blame. It wasn't regret or bitterness. It was tenderness. Real, stripped-down tenderness. He wrote about the quiet version of us. The moments before fame, before pressure, before misunderstandings hardened into distance. He wrote that he didn't want his final words to her to be courtroom signatures or headlines. He wanted honesty, peace, something unbroken even if their marriage no longer stood. The storm outside softened for a moment, as if pausing to listen. She kept reading. Elvis admitted he didn't know how to lay down the armor he wore in public. He said he was tired of pretending he didn't hurt. He confessed that some days he felt like he was slipping into noise, the world around him moving faster than he could breathe. Short line, a sharp sting, a truth too heavy. Priscilla felt her throat tighten. She wondered, how do you comfort someone who hides their pain behind a smile? And how many times had she missed the signs? Her eyes reached the final sentence, and everything inside her stilled. It rewrote their goodbye in an instant. It took all the years between them and folded them into a single message he never sent. The final paragraph rewrites everything she believed about their goodbye. The final paragraph felt different from every line before it. It didn't tremble with fear. It didn't carry frustration or regret. It carried something far more fragile. Something honest. Priscilla steadied her breathing as she read the first sentence again, letting each word sink in like slow drops of rain. Elvis wrote about peace. Not reconciliation. Not romance. Just peace. The kind that comes from two people who have lived through storms and still choose kindness over bitterness. He wrote that he hoped, someday, they could find our way back to the quiet version of us. That phrase clung to her heart. She pictured the nights at their first home in Memphis, when fame hadn't swallowed every hour. Nights where they sat on the porch with nothing but crickets and warm air. No audience, no pressure, just them. A gust of wind rattled the window, but Priscilla didn't look up. She couldn't. The words kept pulling her deeper. He said he missed the sound of her laugh when no one else was around. He missed how she grounded him when the world spun too fast. He wrote that he didn't know how to be Elvis the man, when everyone demanded Elvis the icon. Short line, a quiet truth, punch to the heart. Her fingers tightened the edge of the paper. He wasn't asking for another chance at love. He was asking for something gentler, a place where the noise stopped and they could be human again. She felt tears gather, blurring the ink slightly. She blinked them away, afraid the paper would drink in her sorrow. She had always believed their ending was final. Signed, sealed, done. But this letter revealed something else. He hadn't been letting go. He had been softening the landing. He wanted their goodbye to be kinder than the headlines, kinder than the courtroom silence, kinder than the months of distance that had cooled their world. The storm outside softened. The thunder became a low murmur instead of a roar. It almost felt like the house was holding its breath with her. She wondered quietly, what do we do when someone reaches for us after we've already stepped away? And how many goodbyes in life are unfinished without us knowing? She read the last lines again. His handwriting steadied as he wrote them, every curve of the pen careful. He thanked her for the years they shared, the memories that shaped him, the versions of himself he could only show her. He wrote that no matter what the world believed, he had never blamed her for the cracks that fame carved into their life. Then came a final truth. 6 soft words that wrapped around her like a whisper she wasn't prepared for. I hope you find your peace too. Her breath caught. It felt like a hand reaching across time. A gentle release. A final blessing. She pressed the letter to her chest, eyes closed, letting the emotion rise and fall like the storm outside. And in that moment, one thought hit her so suddenly it forced her to stand. Someone else needed to know about this. She reached for the phone on the small wooden desk in the corner. Her hand shook as she dialed the number she hadn't called in years. Priscilla makes one phone call that changes everything. The phone felt heavier than it should. Priscilla held it to her ear, listening to the slow, distant rings. The house creaked under the storm, each sound stretching the moment tighter. On the 4th ring, the line clicked. A familiar voice, older, softer, but unmistakable, answered. Priscilla. Jerry Schilling. She hadn't spoken to him this late in years. For a moment, she couldn't find her words. Her throat tightened and she forced out just 2. It's important. Jerry didn't ask anything else. He simply said, I'm coming. And the line went dead. 28 minutes later, headlights cut through the rain outside the front doors of Graceland. Jerry stepped in, shaking off water, his hair flattened by the storm. Their eyes met, and for a second, neither of them spoke. Something about the moment felt fragile, like stepping back into a room full of old ghosts. He followed her to the trophy room. The lights buzzed faintly above them as thunder rumbled in the distance. When she placed the letter on the table between them, Jerry froze. His breath lifted, then stayed suspended halfway. Elvis wrote this, she said quietly. Jerry reached out with careful fingers. He read the date first, January 6, 1973, and shook his head in disbelief. That week, he murmured. I remember that week. He sat down, shoulders sinking. There was a night in Palm Springs, he said. We were all tired. Elvis had been pacing for hours. He kept staring at a blank page like it was the only thing in the room that scared him. Jerry let out a slow exhale. He didn't want us to see, but I did. Priscilla leaned closer. Rain tapped against the window like fingertips. Jerry continued. He said he needed to write something he didn't know how to say out loud. I figured it was about the divorce. But now... He looked at the letter again, eyes softening. Now it makes sense. A low hum filled the room from the air vents. The storm outside quieted to a steady drizzle, but their memories seemed to grow louder. What did Red know? Priscilla asked. The question had been clawing at her since she saw the margin note. Jerry rubbed his hands together. Red told me once that Elvis was breaking under all the pressure. Not just the tours. Not just the fans. Everything. His voice dropped. He said Elvis was scared he was disappearing inside the image. Afraid no one could see him anymore. Short line. A harsh truth. A weight that settled. Priscilla stared at the gold record on the wall, its reflection shimmering. She remembered the rehearsals that year, the way Elvis tugged at his collar, the way he rubbed his temple when he thought no one was watching. She remembered moments that felt small back then but heavy now. Jerry pulled something from his jacket pocket. A small cassette tape weathered at the edges. "I brought this because I never knew how to explain it without proof." He set it gently on the table. Rehearsal tape, Las Vegas Hilton. January 73. Priscilla's breath caught. She recognized the label, tape number 14. The writing smudged from age. Jerry clicked the recorder on. Tape has filled the room, followed by Elvis's voice. Raw, fragile, cracking in places she had never heard publicly. He didn't sound like the king. He sounded like a man trying not to fall apart. Priscilla clutched the edge of the table. She whispered, "Why didn't he tell me?" Jerry's answer came slow. "Because he didn't want you carrying his pain. He still loved you too much to do that." The tape continued softly, Elvis humming a broken line. The letter, the margin note, the tape, the memories, all of it pointed to one truth she hadn't been ready to face. There was one last decision Priscilla had to make. Priscilla stood in the trophy room long after Jerry turned off the tape. The hiss faded. Elvis's fragile humming dissolved into silence. But the weight of everything she just learned stayed heavy in the air, like dust that refused to settle. She held the letter gently, almost protectively, feeling each crease under her fingertips. The storm outside had softened into a quiet drizzle, but inside her, something still thundered. Jerry watched her carefully from across the table. He didn't rush her. He knew the look on her face. He had seen it once before, years ago, when the world first learned Elvis was gone. It was the face of someone trying to hold two truths at once. The legend everyone remembered, and the man only a few really knew. "What are you thinking?" Jerry asked softly. Priscilla didn't look up. "This changes so much." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Not just for me, for his legacy, for how the world remembers him." She brushed her thumb across the ink. This was his heart speaking, not the stage, not the suit, not the cameras. Jerry nodded. "That's why he hid it," he said. "He didn't want the world to dissect him. Or you." She swallowed hard. She could hear a faint echo of Elvis's voice from memory. Laughing, teasing, singing softly in the kitchen on nights when fame felt so far away. Back then, they were just two people finding comfort in each other. Now she felt like she was holding the last untouched piece of him. Something unedited. Something real. "What do you think he wanted me to do with it?" she asked quietly. Jerry took a slow breath. "Honestly, I don't think he wanted you to do anything. I think he just wanted to say it. Even if the world never heard it." Those words hit her in a tender place. For the first time since she found the envelope, she felt tears slip down her cheeks, warm and silent. She didn't wipe them away. This letter wasn't reopening old wounds. It was revealing ones she didn't know existed. She walked slowly toward the far cabinet, an old wooden drawer where personal items were stored before being cataloged. The archivist wing waited behind a small glass door. She had spent years deciding what would be shared with the world and what would be kept in silence. The hall felt long. Each step echoed softly. She wondered, how many stories in life remain untold because they hurt too much to speak? And how many moments are lost because people hold their truth until it's too late? The questions felt large, almost too heavy to answer. She opened the drawer gently. It smelled of old paper and cedar. Inside were items few people had ever seen. Handwritten notes, childhood objects, a faded ticket stub from a show Elvis performed at age 19, and a tiny silver necklace he once gave her before a tour. Everything inside carried a quiet kind of reverence. Jerry stepped closer but didn't interfere. He understood the importance of this moment, both for her and for Elvis's memory. Priscilla held the letter to her chest one last time, feeling the heartbeat of everything they had lived through. Love, mistakes, growth, distance, hope. She whispered softly, "You deserve to be heard, but you also deserve to be protected." Short line, soft truth, final choice. She placed the envelope gently in the drawer. The paper made a faint sound as it settled, like a breath being released after years of holding still. She paused, letting her fingers rest on it before closing the drawer. A small, final sound, but it felt enormous. She labeled it with careful handwriting. Personal correspondence. Restricted. Not hidden out of shame. Not locked away out of fear. Protected. Preserved. Safe. Jerry placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You did the right thing, he said. Priscilla nodded slowly. Some stories belong to the world, she whispered, but some are meant to heal the people left behind. As she walked back toward the center of the room, she felt a strange peace settle inside her. Not the kind that erases pain, but the kind that accepts it. The storm outside had stopped completely, leaving the night still and clear. She looked at the drawer one last time and whispered to the quiet room. I never forgot the man behind the lights, but the words still echo today. Some stories stay hidden until the right moment. If this one moved you, share it with someone who still carries a quiet memory of someone they once loved. And if you've ever wondered what truth sounds like when spoken too late, there's another untold chapter waiting in the next video.